So for one, so what UTS is, if you haven't used it before, it's just a big database, and it's a training management system. So it allows a planner at USARC, and it allows a company commander in Spokane, Washington, to have the same picture of what training is going to happen. But the training, what's in there needs to be accurate for that to be valuable. The other big thing with UTS is funding is increasingly going to be tied to what UTS is saying. So if you have a unit that is supposed to go to an exercise, and UTS does not reflect that, that's going to start hurting the money that we get from USARC. So we need to make sure that what's in there is accurate. An example that we touched on briefly the other day with MECs, trying to get these maintenance teams to go to the MECs and do maintenance for their annual training instead of going to the field and sitting there. And the way we need to do that is build that maintenance piece into MECs as part of those exercises. So we need to make sure training is in MECs so we get funding, or so, excuse me, is in use so we get funding. Okay, and how is UTS populated? So what happens with exercises and ODTs and IRTs is about 18 months out, USARC, 807th, the 3rd, AirMedCom meet, and they decide what units are going to go to what exercises, who's going to do what ODTs, at least generally speaking, and they decide who's going to apply for what IRT missions. So this happened just last month. Everybody got together. We talked about where people were going. And from there, that information is going to be put into UTS. So that's kind of how we build that. With ODTs, we get the requirement from for example, Southcom applies for the ODT mission, goes to USARC once it's approved, and then we put a unit against that. With IRTs, the community applies for a mission. It goes to UASD and then to USARC, and they divvy it out. So for IRT missions that we apply for, we're not competing against 3rd or AirMedCom, because we deconflict that at this planning meeting. And all that information gets put into UTS. And a lot of times, though, like I just said, that's 18 months in advance. So things are going to change, and things might not be accurate from there. So we need to make sure we're keeping UTS updated as best as possible. And to do that, we audit UTS regularly at 807th. We need brigades to be looking at that regularly, and battalions, and really all the way down to the company and detachment level. Please make sure those units of yours at least basically understand UTS so they can go in there and make sure that what's in UTS is what they plan on doing. Because you don't want some company commander to get on there and say, this isn't what I'm doing, this is totally wrong. And then he can go to the battalion and say, why is this in UTS? The battalion can say, oh, that's wrong, let's get it fixed. Or they can say, that's what we're doing, how did you not know that? But so that's part of the communication you need to do while looking at UTS and making sure it's accurate. Any questions so far regarding the UTS piece? When you go into UTS, when you're accessing UTS, you can use either of these links if you're in the internet or the intranet. This will be, you'll have this in your CD. Okay, you do need to use your email certificate. So if you're trying to get on there and you don't have access, it may be because you're not using your email certificate. So make sure you're using the email certificate to get on there. This is the page it's going to look like. For your purposes that we're going to be doing, you're going to want to go, click right here. That'll take you to this page. You're going to want to look at scheduled training. So the report that's going to be most valuable for you most of the time is going to be the scheduled training report. That's going to show your units and what they're supposed to be doing. So you're going to click there. It's going to take you to this page. You'll choose your training level and your fiscal year. Make sure you got the right fiscal year. You don't want to have like 2013 selected, and then for like a half an hour, you're thinking, this isn't right. Oh, my units are going to the wrong place, and you realize you're in the wrong year. So make sure you got the right year in. Now, as early as this time, if you want, you can go ahead and export it or view your report. That's going to show every single unit in USARC for that year. So you want to do a little bit of refinement. So up top, you have these tabs where you can do your further refinement. So here you're going to choose your event type, and I recommend when you're doing these searches to search for all events. So even if you're looking for a specific ODT event, if that's put in there incorrectly, it's not going to show up. So search for all the events. It just makes it easier. You don't have to keep going back and searching. And you can narrow it down. You can search by UIC. I usually search for everybody in the 807th. From there, now from this point, you can keep going to sort, and you have various sorting options to sort your report. This is usually not particularly valuable. I recommend just exporting this to Excel and sorting from there however you see fit. So once you got this finished and you're ready to go, you can just go to Data View, and that'll give you a web-based view of the UTS data, or you can go ahead and export it to an Excel sheet. I recommend going to the Excel sheet, but however you want to do it. So if you do it in the window, it's going to look like this, and if you do it this way, you can still export from here if you want to. It's going to show you everything you got. So I'm going to go through the printout. As you can see, it's pretty busy, and this is only a small portion. There's about 50 different columns. So so it's not really conducive to PowerPoint. But I've kind of divided it up here, and hopefully I can go through this, and it'll help you understand what you're looking at when you're looking at UTS. So I've got two separate units. First I'm going to show you a CSTX, and then I'm going to show you an ODT. They're a little bit different how they're populated in here. So this is one exercise. This is CSTX 14-03, and for one unit. This is for the 352nd Combat Support Hospital. The reason there's 3 lines on here is because each of these lines represent a different portion of this exercise. And you'll see as we go farther down the line, basically the first 3 lines here are planning conferences, and the last one is the actual event itself. Okay, now a lot of this stuff you don't need to worry about too much. Fiscal year is going to be whatever you put in. Most of this stuff is not going to change. Your unit, whatever you're searching for, your unit information should be correct there. AREP, you don't need to worry about it anymore. Like I said, there's a lot of columns in here that are outdated, don't need to worry about. So as you're going through this, if you're going to keep this as a product, it helps to get rid of some of these redundant columns, so you're not going through 50 columns every time. And you're not going to need to know what your AREP is. E-date, no one knows what that is. I actually talked to the SRC manager at USARC. There's columns in here that people don't know. They're actually going to look at getting rid of some of these. They're talking to the contractor who created this program and trying to get rid of some of the redundant pieces in there. So don't worry, whatever E-date says, don't worry about it. Your compo, the unit that you're in. Now on this page, right here, this is the location of the exercise. So keep that in mind. This is not a location of the unit, this is the location of the exercise. You need to make sure that that's correct and reflects what you're tracking. Okay, as you move along the spreadsheet, you're going to have your numbers here. Your required and authorized strength, then your participants, and this is based on the max participants is your strength, and then this is a CSTX, so 80% of that is your minimum participants. So that's for the exercise itself. Like I said, these are saying 3 each, these are the planning conferences that we're talking about. Projected participants and actual participants, I've never seen that ever updated, so it's going to say 0 most likely, and don't worry about it. You don't need to call us and get that changed. All right, a little bit more information here. You can see for the planning exercises, it's going to be ADT and then AT for the actual exercise. Now, if for some reason, just because this is ADT, if you need to put one of your people on AT for that or something, this doesn't dictate what you use. That you're going to still talk to the G8 and use them to decide what you're going to use for your people. Your echelon, staff, and hospital. Now here, this can be confusing as well. So duty start and duty end, that is the duty start and duty end date for that particular portion of the mission. So this is for the planning conferences, the duty start and the duty end date. If you go over a little bit, you'll see the event start and event end date. And that's all the same, because that's all the event start and end date for the actual mission, which is the CSTX 1403. The task description, you can see planning conferences and exercise. These 3 lines for an exercise are going to be blank. Those are ODT lines, and I'll talk about those shortly. The requester for this is USARC. For exercises, these are always going to say high, or generally at least for the requester priority and the USARC priority, because it's a USARC exercise. Okay, status code. There's 10 different codes that they use. Generally, from what I've usually seen for us, it's usually going to be an 8 Echo or 8 Sierra, and that's good. That means it's been approved. If you see something other than that, you can push that up to see what's going on. I haven't seen that for any of our units, but if you do see that, let us know. It probably means there's some kind of conflict, or it probably means it was just inputted incorrectly, but we can look into that to make sure it's correct. The event type here is an exercise. Event name, like I talked about. Fund code, RB, is USARC. Eval code, take-home package, that's what you're going to see for most of your exercises. And the mission for this, of course, you're the training audience. This unit's going there to get trained. Okay, moving on here. The UIC of the unit, the as update. Again, this is supposed to be when this was last updated, but this date can be anything. I've seen this date in the future. from when I've pulled the reports and far in the past. So the as of date's not going to be too important for you. Remarks, usually it's blank, but there's something in there with a little bit more information for you. Where they are in the oxygen cycles, their available year. Force, another one of those redundant columns that no one knows what it means. I've only seen it ever be to be determined, so don't worry about that one. And then finally, this is the home station of the unit. This is an important column, second to last one here. This is your AFPD, and that should be accurate. Make sure that reflects what you're tracking for your units. If it's not, let us know so we can get that updated. And then your unit level there at the end. Any questions on that piece for a CSTX or a WARX? Okay, that's what it's going to look like when you're looking at that. Okay, so an ODT is going to be a little bit different. So this is the ODT for Beyond the Horizons, Dominican Republic. This is for just one of those ODTs for the 437th Ground Ambulance Company. And this is all going to be pretty much the same as we talked about before. Now you got to look here and make sure, do verify that this information is correct. For a foreign country, city and state are going to usually be, say, unknown, but make sure that the country is accurate and the theater is accurate. So this is the Dominican Republic under Southbound. Okay, and then here, like I said, this is one ODT, but it's broken up into the different portions of the mission. So what you've got is the different waves going through, the different rotations. Then you have some planning conferences in here, as well as the ADVON, trail, and the operations NCOIC or OIC who'll be there for the entire time. And it breaks that down a little bit in a little more detail. So you can see now the sponsor ODT line and ODT sequence line are now populated. So the sponsor, this is a U.S. Army South mission. The ODT line, this is ODT 15104. Okay, and each of these ODT sequence codes corresponds to that ODT line number. If that makes sense. So the first rotation going through is 15104P. That's the ODT sequence for that mission. But they all fall under the same ODT line number. For event start, you can see this event start date is for the entire ODT mission, and then here it's broken down by rotation. So this rotation starts on the 5th, ends on the 19th. This one picks up on the 19th to the 3rd, and so on and so forth. And you have the planning conference, and then the operations officer for the duration, and then the ADVON and the trail. And it's a little more detail here explaining those. So here the mission, rather than saying training exercise, you can see there's a lot more detail explaining what that portion of the mission contains. So you can see here too, the status code of 8E and 8S. Like I said, either of those are fine. They both mean it's been approved. Okay, and then remarks, again, like I said, usually blank. This is their home station. Again, do verify that this information is correct, this data is correct, and then the unit level. If you have any questions about how UTS works, at least generally, and how to do these reports, understand these reports.